Newcastle and speak to our reporter, Keith Downey, who's there for us. Morning, Keith. So, what happened at Isak's house last night?
Oh, I think we'd all like to know the answer to that question. And look, we'll be endeavouring to find out how that meeting ended. But two of the club's directors, Jamie Rubin, who's been at the forefront of Newcastle's transfer business this summer, and also Jacobo Solis from the PIF, visited Alexander Isak yesterday in the build-up to kick-off. To discuss the situation, of course, that has surrounded him for the majority of the summer. As we know, Alexander Isak training away from the group. He refused to play against Liverpool last night, who, of course, as we know, are trying to sign him. Refused to play against Aston Villa in the season opener the week before that as well, and has been for the majority of the summer agitating to leave the football club. Now, it will be interesting to see what comes out of that meeting, whether it was a case of a last try from the PIF, the club's owners, to try and convince Alexander Isak to stay. I would suggest with the promise of a new contract, a pay rise, and the ability to maybe leave next summer, or was it a discussion to say, look, yes, you could actually move on to Liverpool, because as we know, they are still interested in signing the Newcastle striker. And of course, just to add intrigue and an extra mystique to the whole situation, of course, it was Liverpool who were playing Newcastle here last night here at St James's Park, and of course left with a 3-2 win thanks to that 100th minute winner. So there was a sting in the tail for Newcastle United last night. Will there be a sting in the tail with this Alexander Isak situation? I still don't think it's written in stone as to whether the Swedish striker will remain or leave. But of course, if he was to leave for Liverpool between now and Monday's deadline, it would be for a Premier League transfer record, and Newcastle working furiously in the background to try and line up a couple of replacements. But that has been the case, of course, for a number of weeks now.
Hard question to answer this, Keith, but how do you expect things to unfold then over the next 6 days?
Yeah, well, look, I think the best way to explain it is plates are spinning at the moment. That has been the case for some time. Look, we knew that Newcastle have tried to bring in a couple of replacements for Alexander Isak to allow him to move to Liverpool. They came so close for Benjamin Sesko, who opted for Manchester United. They came so close for Rio Ekitike, who, of course, ironically scored here at St James's Park for Liverpool last night in that 3-2 win. But they're spinning plates, they're trying to bring in replacements. I still believe that if Newcastle manage to bring in 2 replacements, he will be allowed to go. But there is a feeling from certain elements from within the club, certain people from in the club, that they would love Alexander Isak to stay, none more so than the manager Eddie Howe, who has gone on record as to say he would love to have him at his disposal. But he did, after the match, Eddie Howe last night, essentially plead for a bit of clarity on this situation, because it's dragged on for so long and it's certainly overshadowed the build-up to tonight's match against Liverpool. So look, as we've been saying for a number of weeks, Newcastle trying to sign Yoane Wissa from Brentford. There is still hope that a deal can be struck there, but of course they've had 2 offers turned down. The first for £25 million last month, then the second just over a week ago for £40 million. I feel that's Newcastle's limit. It'll be interesting to see if the 2 clubs come back together to try and get a deal done, with Brentford actively in the background looking for a striker of their own. And the second is the news that we brought to you yesterday, that Newcastle had a £50 million offer to Wolves turned down for their striker Jorgen Strand Larsen. £50 million package, all up front, no add-ons, turned down. Wolves say they want to keep him, they can't lose him. They've lost a number of players this summer. It'll be interesting to see whether Newcastle go back in with a second offer there. But look, they are very active. They're still trying to sign players this transfer window, and I think that is because there's still a chance, a decent chance, that Alexander Isak could leave between now and Monday's deadline. A lot can change in the next 5 or 6 days, and it's a very, very fluid situation here at St James's Park right now.
Great stuff. Cheers, Keith. OK, well, that is the Newcastle perspective. Let's get to Peter Stevenson and have a Liverpool perspective now. Afternoon, Peter. Now that the game has gone, between the two sides at St James's Park. Is there an expectation that Liverpool will bid for Isak once again?
I think that was almost the theory at the start of the week, and as you say, getting last night's game out of the way with that really hostile reception for Liverpool and rubbing salt into the wound by actually walking away with a dramatic 100th minute winner and all 3 points just would have satisfied Liverpool no end. But as you say, today, letting the dust settle and assessing where things are, they will have picked up, I'm sure, on that meeting between Isak and his and the club's hierarchy yesterday. You sense that Liverpool at the moment maybe just have to be a little bit patient. Maybe they will wait for encouragement before deciding their next move, and whether that next move involves increasing their bid, we don't really know at this stage. It's been all quiet this morning, as Keith was alluding to there. There's only a few days left. There's a lot of potentials. There's a domino effect possible there if everything falls into place. But the bottom line is, it would appear from the Merseyside point of view that Newcastle are digging in their heels and trying everything they can to persuade Isak to stay. Eddie Howe saying last night as well that he wanted the players that really wanted to play at the club to stay there, that those were the type of players that he wanted. So you can sense that sort of desperation from the Newcastle end, especially with their injuries last night and their suspension that they picked up. So Liverpool at the moment, I think, content to play the waiting game and really waiting for information from that meeting. That would appear to be key to how this long-running saga that's dominated the summer, how it will eventually pan out.
So is it Isak or bust for Liverpool now, or have they got other targets as well?
Well, if you look at the opening two results, the evidence of that suggests that, weirdly, scoring goals for Liverpool at the moment and wanting a top striker doesn't appear to be too much of a problem. They scored 4 against Bournemouth, they scored 3 last night, and in many ways they seem to have plenty of options up top. I think a lot of their supporters, if you ask them, will express great concern about the way things are at the back, and certainly Konate has looked really unsure and unsteady for the opening 2 games. They've conceded 2 goals in both those opening games, and they didn't concede 2 goals in a Premier League game last season until the end of October. So that's an indication maybe about how potentially wobbly their back four is at the moment. And you've only got to look at Van Dijk last night. He walked away with some serious stud marks down his Achilles. If that had been worse and we were looking at Van Dijk missing games, then again you see the fragility of that back four. So Mark Gay's long been talked about as a possible replacement. I'm sure on the evidence maybe of last night, Liverpool might be again looking at that and might be thinking it's the back four that needs sorting out. Certainly we've still got plenty of options up top, and not in the least we've still got a bright little 16-year-old who can come on and score goals for fun when he wants to, even in the dying minutes of a big game. So at the moment all quiet. I think it's a patient waiting game, but it could spark into life, I think, at any minute.
All right, let's get back to Isak then, Jeff, and from Newcastle's point of view, surely they can't allow him to leave with little prospect of getting a suitable replacement in.
Yeah, it depends how last night's talks went with the ownership group. Time is ticking now. I feel like it's getting later and later, and for them to get people in to replace him, it's difficult. Like we said earlier, they haven't even replaced Wilson yet.
Yeah.
And then if they're going to lose Isak as well, it's a bit of a sticky situation for them, and with it dragging on for weeks and months, obviously the whole club want him to stay, and that seems to be the best decision for them. But I think ultimately it might come down to what was talked about yesterday.
Yeah.
Eihän tää nyt pahasti. Ei kuule. Vaasan sähköinen määräaikainen soppari. Toisi vakautta sinun elämääsi.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to come on to that, actually. It's a bizarre situation, isn't it? A couple of co-owners going round to a player's house to try and convince, we presume, to try and convince him to stay. It might have been something else, but going round to his house. What can we read into that? Have you ever heard of that situation before with an owner going to a player's house?
No, I don't think I've heard of that, no. Reading into it, for me, it's because it's dragged on so long, it seemed messy. The whole vibe around it it's a little bit toxic. Depends what fan base you're looking at it from, but for them to step in and go to his house, it's like they're trying to show a strong hold and get him to stay at the club, because I think they see how much they really need him to stay now.
Yeah. But James, does that also sort of highlight that there's been a power vacuum at Newcastle? Because normally that would be sporting director would do that job, go round to the house, or the manager even, not on a game day, obviously. But
they've been in a really difficult situation because the CEO will be departing due to